December 23rd, 1783, Maryland State House. George Washington walks into a room full of Congress members to do something absolutely unthinkable. He's about to hand back total military power, voluntarily. King George III of Britain hears about it later and says if Washington actually does this, he'll be the greatest man in the world. And here's what makes this so wild. Washington had an army loyal to him personally. He could have been king. He could have been dictator. People literally wanted him to be king. But this Pisces sun with a Capricorn moon looked at all that power and said, no thanks, I'm going home to my farm. The transcendence of ego, the sacrifice for a higher calling. And wait till you see what his Venus placement predicted about the way he'd craft his entire public image. There's also a Mars and Scorpio thing that explains his complex relationship with power, the man who wielded it masterfully but refused to keep it for himself. Quick thing before we get into this. If you're obsessed with understanding historical figures through their charts, hit subscribe, drop a like if you're ready for this story, and real talk, I want to know, would you be able to give up absolute power like Washington did? Or is that level of Pisces self-sacrifice actually impossible for most people? Comment below, because this one's genuinely fascinating to think about. Okay, so, George Washington. Born February 22nd, 1732 at 10 a.m. in Pope's Creek, Virginia. First President of the United States, father of his country, the guy whose face is literally on money. But here's what nobody talks about. His chart is the entire explanation for why American democracy even exists. Without this specific combination of placements, the revolution probably becomes a dictatorship. Not exaggerating. Sun in Pisces in the 11th house. The 11th house is all about humanitarian vision, collective good, the bigger picture beyond yourself. Pisces is the dreamer, the mystic, the sign that understands there's something bigger than the material world. So you've got visionary energy in the house of humanity's future. Of course he became the father of a nation. Moon in Capricorn in the 9th house. Duty, philosophy, moral authority, the weight of responsibility. This is the placement that kept him grounded. Pisces wants to transcend. Capricorn says, yeah, but first, you have to build something that actually works in reality. Taurus rising gave him that steady, commanding physical presence. The man was 6'3" when most men were 5'6". He walked into a room, and people just felt it. Mars and Scorpio gave him strategic military genius in this really complex relationship with power. And Venus in Pisces made him compassionate, but also incredibly good at managing his image, at appearing what they called disinterested, meaning above personal ambition. Mercury in Aquarius, revolutionary thinker, the guy who helped invent American democracy. This chart predicted everything about him, the contradiction that made him irreplaceable. George's father, Augustine, died when he was 11 years old, April 12th, 1743. Everything changes. His older half-brothers inherited most of the property. George got Ferry Farm and 10 enslaved people. That's it. And because his father died, George didn't get to go to school in England like his older brothers did. No formal education, no college, just some local schooling in Fredericksburg and a lot of self-teaching. Very Pisces, actually. Intuition over formal learning, figuring things out through feel rather than structure. But here's where you see the Capricorn Moon already working. At 11 years old, George has to help his mother Mary manage the plantation. He learns about hard work, efficiency, responsibility. The Capricorn Moon doesn't get to be a kid for long. And his Pisces sun starts channeling into this really specific form of self-improvement. When he's like 15, 16 years old, he copies out 110 rules of social behavior. The rules of civility and decent behavior. Line by line, over 100 rules about how to act, how to treat people, how to be in the world. Pisces absorbing the ideal of how to be, then making it second nature through Capricorn discipline. This becomes huge later. The integrity everyone talks about with Washington, it started here. A teenage kid using his chart's energy to literally program himself for greatness. By 17, he's working as a surveyor for Culpeper County. His family connections helped? Sure. But he earned it through actual skill. Taurus rising, giving him that practical talent with his hands, that connection to land and physical work. He's out there plotting fields, learning the frontiers, seeing the vastness of what could be. and that Pisces vision is already active, he becomes convinced early that westward expansion is the future, not just for himself, for the colonies, for what could become a nation. 1752. His half-brother Lawrence passes away. George inherits Mount Vernon eventually. But right then he pivots hard into military life. French and Indian War starts brewing. 1753, he volunteers for a dangerous mission. Virginia's governor sends him to the Ohio Valley to deliver a message to the French, basically saying, "Get out." Washington's 21. He takes the mission, nearly freezes to make it back, becomes a bit of a hero for his bravery. Classic Mars in Scorpio. Strategic, intense, willing to risk everything. 1755, Battle of Monongahela. Washington serving as aide to General Braddock. The battle's a disaster. Braddock gets fatally wounded. But Washington, he's got 2 horses shot out from under him, 4 bullet holes through his coat. Doesn't get hit once. He rallies the troops, organizes the retreat, and people start saying he's protected by Providence. Pisces' connection to the divine. He genuinely believed his life was guided by something bigger than himself, and the thing is, this belief wasn't ego. It was Pisces' surrender to a higher power, combined with Capricorn's sense that if you're being protected, it's because you have a duty to fulfill. Fast forward to 1759. January 6th, he marries Martha Dandridge Custis. She's 27, a wealthy widow with 2 young kids and considerable property. George is 26. This marriage makes him one of the wealthiest men in Virginia through the land and enslaved people Martha controls. They move to Mount Vernon. For the next 16 years, he's a gentleman farmer. He's breeding horses, rotating crops, experimenting with farming techniques. Taurus, rising excellence, building something stable, something that lasts. But also watch the Pisces show up. He stops growing tobacco because it damages the soil. It's just about profit. It's about sustainability, about leaving something better than you found it. That long-term vision. 1775, everything changes. Second Continental Congress appoints him Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. He's 43 years old, and here's the Pisces sacrifice showing up immediately. He doesn't want the job. He genuinely doesn't, but he answers the call anyway because it's bigger than him. He even refuses a salary, just asks for his expenses to be covered. Who does that? A Pisces sun in the 11th house who sees this as service to the collective, not a career move. The Revolutionary War is brutal. His army's a mess, untrained, undersupplied, facing the most powerful military in the world. And Washington, he's not even the best tactical general. He loses battles, a lot of them. But here's what his chart gives him that nobody else had. Endurance, vision, the ability to keep people believing even when everything looks hopeless. Christmas night, 1776. He's about to do something absolutely unhinged, cross the Delaware River at night, in a blizzard, with ice chunks the size of boulders in the water. To surprise attack Hessian troops in Trenton. It's Pisces intuition meets Capricorn calculation. He feels it's the right move even though it's incredibly dangerous. The crossing takes way longer than planned. Men are freezing, but they pull it off. Total surprise, total victory. Rout the Hessians completely. And here's the thing. More American men died from the cold than from enemy bullets. But Washington kept them going through sheer force of that Pisces compassion and Capricorn discipline. Then comes Valley Forge, winter of 1777-1778. This is where the chart really shows itself. His armies camped about 20 miles from British-occupied Philadelphia. It's one of the most brutal winters they've faced. Not enough food, not enough blankets, not enough shoes. A third of his army lacks viable footwear, bloody footprints in the snow. 2,000 men die from cold, hunger, disease, typhus, smallpox, pneumonia, starvation. Washington could have gone somewhere warmer. He was the commander-in-chief, but Pisces doesn't abandon people when they're suffering. He moves into a stone house near the camp and stays there, writing letters to Congress, begging for supplies, defending himself against political enemies like the Conway cabal who wanted him replaced. The Capricorn Moon is handling the administrative nightmare. The Pisces sun is keeping emotional connection with his men, making them feel like they're in this together, and he's using the winter brilliantly. Baron von Steuben shows up and drills the army, training them properly for the first time. Washington's taking a starving, demoralized force and transforming them into actual soldiers. By June 1778, when they march out of Valley Forge, they're a completely different army, disciplined, trained, ready. That's Pisces' vision, seeing what could be, not just what is. October 1781, Yorktown, British General Cornwallis surrenders. The war is effectively over. America won. Washington's 49 years old. He's been commander-in-chief for 6 years. His army is intensely loyal to him personally. Some officers literally suggest he should be king. And in any other timeline, with any other chart, that probably happens. But December 23rd, 1783. Watch what he does. He arrives in Annapolis, Maryland on December 19th. Congress is meeting there. He writes asking how they want him to resign, in writing or in person. They say in person. December 22nd, there's this massive feast in his honor. 200 to 300 people. He gives a toast about giving Congress more power for general purposes. Then there's a ball that night. 600 guests, and Washington dances in every set so all the ladies can dance with him at least once. Very Pisces. He's thinking about other people's experience, making sure everyone feels included in the moment. December 23rd, noon, Maryland State House. Only 20 delegates show up from Congress, but the room's packed with spectators. Washington walks in, his 2 aides behind him, and he gives this speech that has people literally crying. His voice breaks at one point. He talks about how honored he was to serve, about the men who served with him, about Providence guiding them, about how this was always about something bigger than himself. Then he physically hands his military commission to Thomas Mifflin, President of Congress. He's returning power to civilian authority, and he says, "Having now finished the work assigned me, I retire from the great theater of action, and bidding an affectionate farewell to this august body, under whose orders I have so long acted, I here offer my commission and take my leave of all the employments of public life." He bows to Congress, says goodbye, rides home to Mount Vernon, makes it there by Christmas Eve. The transcendence of ego, pure Pisces. He had absolute power, and he walked away from it. King George III hears about this and apparently tells painter Benjamin West that if Washington actually does it, he'll be the greatest man in the world. Because kings and dictators don't give up power. They die holding on to it. But Washington wasn't motivated by personal power. Pisces' sun in the 11th house doesn't work that way. It's about the collective dream, the vision of what could be, the sacrifice required to make it real. This resignation is literally what made American democracy possible. If he keeps power, it sets the precedent that military leaders can become dictators. But he gives it back to Congress, to the people. Civilian control over military, the foundation of everything. But he's not done. 1787 Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. The Articles of Confederation aren't working. The states are barely united. The country's falling apart. And they ask Washington to be president of the convention. Again, he doesn't want to. Again, he does it anyway. His presence gives the whole thing legitimacy. If Washington's there, people trust it. 1789. Unanimously elected first president of the United States. Every single electoral vote. And watch the Pisces energy. He doesn't want the job. He's 57. He wants to stay at Mount Vernon. But Venus in Pisces understands image. Understands what his acceptance means for the country. So he says yes. Takes no salary again. Just expenses. Sets up the cabinet system. Establishes how the presidency should work. Creates the template. His farewell address in 1797, warning against political parties and foreign entanglements. Visionary Pisces seeing dangers decades ahead. Things that come true. Things we're still dealing with. He serves 2 terms. Could have run for a 3rd. Probably would have won. But he says no. Steps down voluntarily. Hands power to John Adams. Again. He gives it up again. Because Pisces doesn't hold on to things. Pisces releases. Pisces transcends. But we have to talk about the complication, the shadow that his chart couldn't fully overcome in his time. Washington owned enslaved people his entire life. From age 11, when he inherited 10 people from his father, to his death at 67. At Mount Vernon, over 300 enslaved people lived and worked by 1799. His wealth came from their forced labor. His ability to serve in public life for decades without regular income possible because of slavery. And here's where the Pisces' internal conflict shows up. His views evolved, slowly. By the end of his life, he's privately expressing support for abolition. His will frees his personal valet, William Lee, immediately. The other 123 people he owned personally would be freed upon Martha's death. She ends up freeing them a year after George passes away because apparently she's worried they might, want her gone so they can be free, which is dark. Mars in Scorpio gave him complex relationship with power and control. He used enslaved labor to build his wealth and maintain Mount Vernon. But Pisces' sun is aware of the moral contradiction, the ideals of liberty and equality he fought for versus the reality of slavery. He never reconciled it publicly. Freed his enslaved people in death, not in life. The evolved Pisces seeks to serve all of humanity. The shadow Pisces avoids confronting the uncomfortable reality that would require sacrificing personal benefit. It's the incompleteness in an otherwise extraordinary chart, the place where his time period's norms overpowered his individual evolution. But look at what he did accomplish. Valley Forge. Capricorn endurance keeping the army together through impossible conditions. Pisces compassion making men feel like their suffering mattered. The resignation in Annapolis. Pure Pisces. Transcendence of personal ambition for the collective good. The presidency. Venus in Pisces crafting a public image of disinterested service, of being above personal gain, while Capricorn Moon did the actual administrative work of building a government. His physical presence, Taurus rising. He was 6'3", athletic, commanding. People felt authority just being near him. That grounded, stable earth energy combined with Pisces' spiritual vision created this aura that nobody else had. Every founding father said he was irreplaceable, and they were right. There's no American Revolution without Washington's character holding it together. Mercury in Aquarius gave him revolutionary thinking, the ability to imagine a completely new form of government, democracy as experiment, not tradition. Pisces provided the idealism, the belief that it could work, the faith in something bigger than personal interest. Here's what kills me about his chart. The dual fish of Pisces swimming in opposite directions. That duality is him completely. One fish swimming toward transcendence, spiritual evolution, service to the collective. The other fish tied to the material world, to slavery, to the limitations of his time. Capricorn Moon gave him the discipline to build something lasting in reality. Taurus rising gave him the stability to endure. Mars in Scorpio gave him strategic brilliance and complex relationship with power. Venus in Pisces gave him compassionate leadership and mastery of public image. December 12, 1799. Washington's out inspecting his farms on horseback for 5 hours in terrible weather, doesn't change into dry clothes before dinner, develops a sore throat. By December 14th, he's having trouble breathing. They do bloodletting, common medical practice but ultimately harmful. He passes away that night. 67 years old. His last words are about making sure they wait 3 days before burying him because he's terrified of being buried alive. Very Pisces fear. The boundary between life and death, between consciousness and void. Even at the end, his mind is on that liminal space. His will's instructions about freeing his enslaved people become his final act. Not perfect, not enough, but evolution. That's Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac carrying every lesson learned by all the signs before it. Growth, change, the slow movement towards something better. What Washington's chart shows us is this: Pisces idealism without Capricorn discipline becomes escapism. Capricorn duty without Pisces vision becomes cold authoritarianism. But together, they create sustainable revolution, dreams made real, vision turned into structure that lasts. And when you add Taurus rising for stability, Mars in Scorpio for strategy, Venus in Pisces for compassionate image crafting, Mercury in Aquarius for revolutionary thinking, you get the only person who could have held the American Revolution together and then voluntarily walked away from power. Twice. The resignation in Annapolis is the most Pisces thing that ever happened in American history. The moment when personal ambition dissolved into service to something greater, when the individual ego surrendered to collective need. when power was released because holding onto it would have corrupted the entire vision. That's evolved Pisces energy. That's the transcendence his chart was built for. And that's why, without this specific combination of placements, American democracy probably doesn't happen. You need someone who can dream it, build it, and then let it go. That's George Washington's chart. That's why he's irreplaceable. That's why Pisces energy, when it's evolved and combined with the right supporting placements, can literally change the course of human history. The father of his country, not because he wanted to be, but because his chart wouldn't let him be anything else.